Way back in 1917, when the First World War was in its third year, Frances Griffiths and her mother arrived in the UK after leaving their home in South Africa after her father went off to fight in the war. They were staying with the Wright family in Cottingley village in West Yorkshire. Polly and Arthur Wright had a 16-year-old daughter named Elsie. Elsie was Frances' cousin, and together they loved to play in the garden, especially at the bottom of the garden where a small stream flowed beautifully down a rocky woodland area right past the Wright property. This stream was and still is called Cottingley Beck. This quickly became their favourite spot to visit daily, and they would often return to the house with wet clothing and wet shoes, which didn't make their parents very happy. And so, as you can imagine, they got in a little bit of trouble each day when they returned. But the girls had the perfect excuse for getting slightly wet in the stream that ran by the house. You see, according to the children, fairies lived down there, and they had been visiting them daily. As you can imagine, the mothers laughed this off and waved away their foolishness. But still, the girls insisted that they had seen fairies at the bottom of the garden and that they liked to play with them. A little frustrated that nobody believed them, the girls wanted to prove that they had indeed seen fairies at the stream, and so they asked Elsie's dad, Arthur, if they could use his camera, and then they would return with proof that the fairies did actually exist. And so, a little amused by the whole story, he did allow them to take his Midge quarter-plate camera, which is now quite old-fashioned. Think of it like a big suitcase with a lens at the front, and you should have a pretty good idea of what it looks like. And so the two girls ventured down to the bottom of the garden to the stream known as the Beck and took some pictures that have now gone down in history as possibly the most famous photograph of supposed real fairies ever caught on film. An hour later, the two girls returned and handed over the big suitcase-like camera to Arthur and told him that they had indeed taken a picture of multiple fairies. Arthur Wright was actually a keen photographer, and he actually had a darkroom right there in his home, and so he went about developing the film. Once developed, Arthur held up the photograph and peered at it with judgmental eyes. The photo shows Frances sat down in the woodland area by the stream, a hand underneath her chin supporting a subtle smile, whilst directly in front of her are four tiny fairies who seem to be flying and dancing for her. One of them is even playing a musical instrument. They all have butterfly-like wings and they are all dressed in light, delicate clothing. Arthur Wright didn't believe that the girls had actually taken a picture of real-life fairies. The only problem was, he couldn't prove it, and the girls still insisted that the photo was real. The photograph in question was snapped sometime in the summer, and it wasn't long before the girls provided more photographic evidence of more magical creatures living at the bottom of the garden. In September of the same year, the girls had taken a photograph of a gnome. In the picture, a small winged gnome can be seen approaching Elsie as she holds out her hand while sitting in the grass. And once again, Arthur was not convinced of how legitimate the photo was and dismissed it as a fake. Elsie's mother, however, was totally convinced that the girls had actually caught something amazing, and this needed to be shared with the right people, and so she took the photo to the Theosophical Society. Now, the best way I can describe this society is a worldwide group of people who are looking for mystical answers to the mysteries of the universe, and they also believe that all life should be treated as one force, and they believe in such things as clairvoyance, telepathy, and travelling to the astral plane. And this society has roots in ancient myths and Buddhism religions, as well as studying all other religions but not following any particular one. Now, this is my very basic understanding of this society, and if I am incorrect, I apologise. So Elsie's mother took the photos to the society and spoke to a gentleman named Edward Gardner, who was actually doing a talk on fairies at actual night, and he was absolutely convinced that the photos were 100% real. And so he took them to a photographic expert who did confirm that the photos of the fairies had not been manipulated in any way, and that the fairies were actually in front of the camera when the picture was taken and not superimposed in any way, shape or form, confirming that the photo was real. But he never said that the fairies were real, he just said that they were in the picture. So he confirmed the photo being untouched, but not the existence of fairies. But Edward Gardner took this as undeniable proof that the fairies in the picture were real, and he started to present the pictures at actual live lectures he would host. And he also had the pictures published in spiritualist magazines. It was in this magazine where Sir Arthur Conan Doyle first came across these pictures. The author of Sherlock Holmes was very interested in spiritualism and was totally convinced that these pictures were 100% the real deal. After all, this was the same Arthur Conan Doyle who believed so strongly in the curse of Tutankhamun, which I covered a couple of episodes back on Bizarre Tales. And it just so happened that he had been asked to write a piece on furries for a magazine called The Strand, and so he asked permission to use the photographs in his article, and this only helped the photos reach more popularity. In total, the girls took 5 photographs, and over the years the photos were seen in many magazines and books and even television shows. It would seem that although some people doubted if the photographs were real or fake, ultimately they couldn't be debunked. That is until the 1980s rolled around, 60 years after the photographs had been taken. A gentleman named Geoffrey Crawley, who was the editor of the British Journal of Photography, decided it was about time a proper investigation went underway, and ultimately it came to the decision, without a shadow of a doubt, that the photographs were indeed fakes. And to hammer the final nail into the coffin, this was backed up by Elsie herself, who had taken the photograph way back in 1917. And in 1983 she admitted that they were indeed fakes, and it was all a prank that they played on their parents that snowballed out of control. Apparently due to their parents not believing that their clothing was wet because they had been visiting furries at the bottom of the garden, the 2 young girls took Mr. Wright's camera and ventured down to the stream with paper cutouts of furries that they had copied from a book called Princess Mary's Gift Book, and these were held up by hat pins. And then the girls simply posed for the camera, creating some very convincing images. After all, Elsie was a very avid photographer herself, and she was quite creative. She loved art and craft, and so it is understandable how she succeeded in creating some of the best fake images that fooled so many people, including Arthur Conan Doyle, whose most successful character, Sherlock Holmes, uses observation, deduction, and logical reasoning. Also, at this time in history, things were grim. The war was raging on, and many husbands and sons were going to defend their country and not returning. It was a dark time, and at this time, spiritualism helped shine a light on people's hopes. People wanted to believe in something magical and mystical, a rare chance to hold on to something positive, and it would not take much convincing for people who desperately wanted to believe in something so wonderful that furries were real. But you may be surprised to hear that even though Elsie owned up to faking the photographs, there are still some people who believe that the 5th and final photo may be the real deal, and this is due to the other cousin Frances, who did admit that the photos were fake, but she insisted that the 5th and final photo, which was named Furries and their Sunbath, was indeed an actual image of furries that they both managed to capture way back in 1920. Is it possible that the 5th image was indeed real? Or did Frances simply want to keep alive the imagination and magic that was created by 2 adventurous children who were told off for returning to the house with wet clothing way back in 1917? As always, I'll let you decide. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you very soon for another bizarre tale. Bye guys.